Okay, this is for Integrated Math 2 Period 1 and Period 3. So as expected, I'm not here today, so you are learning today's lesson through this video. And as you are watching this video, I would like you to also take out your notebook and then start copying as you are watching and moving on in this video. So today we are learning lesson 7, which is on 2-5, and the title is called Factoring x squared plus bx plus c. Well, first let's take a look at the title, because as you could see that this is a trinomial with just x squared only, and then b could be anything, c could be anything. The objective says we'll be able to factor trinomial with leading coefficient of 1. That means that the x squared has to have an invisible 1 in the front. Not a 2, not a 3, but has to be a 1. Okay. So this lesson is related to the x game that you have been doing on Delta Math for the last week, right? Or the last couple lessons. So let's start now. So recall that, let's do a review. Recall that your, if I were to ask you to multiply x plus 9 with x minus 1, you could have done 3 different ways. Either the box method, the distributive property, or the shortcuts. So if you were to multiply this using either box method, distributive property, or the shortcuts, you'll get x squared plus 8x minus 9. So again, from the previous lesson we discussed that this the problem is the factor form, and then this is the standard form. Let's write this down. Okay. And at any point you need some time to write this down, you could pause this video, and then when you're ready you could play it again. Well, our today's goal is to I'm going to give you a standard form and you give me back the factor form. So let's start with some examples. Example, okay, Roman number 1. If I were to ask you to, the keywords is always the word factor. X squared plus 8x minus 9. Okay? Well, your goal is to write me back the 2 parentheses that when you multiply using box method or distributive property, you get x squared plus 8x minus 9. Well, how do you do that? We're going to use the x game method. To do that, you're going to draw the x. Okay? Well, today is your turn to create the 2 numbers by yourself and also find the 2 numbers by yourself. Well, the top number is the constant in the trinomial. So the top number is negative 9, right? And at some point we're going to call this the c, because the quadratic term, we call the number in the front of the a, which is in this case is 1, is always 1. And then the linear term, which is the middle term, is your b, which in this case is 8. And then the last term, the c, is the constant, which is negative 9. So we always put c on the top of the x game. And then at the bottom, we put the letter b. In this case, it's going to be 8. So your goal is to find 2 numbers that multiply to get negative 9 and add to get 8. Well, after some guessing and checking, the 2 numbers that you should have guessed and checked is negative 1 and 9. Because negative 1 times 9 is negative 9, and at the same time, negative 1 plus 9 is positive 8. And those 2 numbers that you found will be the 2 numbers that's inside of parentheses, which in this case is going to be x minus 1, and then this is x plus 9. And then that's it. So, in other words, the factor form of x squared plus 8x minus 9 is x minus 1 multiplied by x plus 9. In the next example, we're going to take a look at a very similar problem. Here we have factor x to the 4th power plus x squared minus 12. You notice that the leading coefficient is also 1, but then the degree is not 2 anymore. In this case, it's 4. This is a quartic, which means 4th power, a quartic trinomial. It's a 4th power with 3 terms. The way that you do it, it's pretty much the same thing. First, you identify what's a, what's b, and what's c. In this case, a is always 1 in this lesson. Here, b is also 1. And when you get to c, it becomes negative 12. So you're going to create your x game by writing the top number as your c. So you're going to put negative 12 on the top, and then the b is at the bottom of the x game, which is 1. So you're going to find two numbers that multiply to get negative 12, and when you add them, you get positive 1. So after some guessing and checking, the two numbers that you should have found is 4 and negative 3. Or you could put negative 3 on the left and 4 on the right. It does not matter. So therefore, you're going to have two parentheses. One of them, you're going to have a positive 4 at the end, and in the other parentheses, you're going to have negative 3 at the end. Well, here, we don't just put x. We do not put just x, because here we have 4th power. Think of it like 4 apples. If you have 4 apples from the original problem, well, you're going to split the 4 apples evenly into the two parentheses. Or ask yourself, x to the what power? Multiply by x to the what power? You're going to get x to the 4th power. Well, it's going to be 2 plus 2, right? And they have to be the same. So therefore, you're going to put x squared here and x squared here. So therefore, your answer, the factor form of x to the 4th plus x squared minus 12 is the product of x squared plus 4 and x squared minus 3. And then you box your answer. Well, the last thing you're going to learn in this lesson is something called factor completely. What does completely mean? Well, every time you see a trinomial, you don't just start the x game right away. Because take a look at this problem. Well, didn't I say that your leading coefficient is going to be 1 in this lesson? Well, here there is a negative 4. You're like, well, what do I do with the x game? So before you start your x game, you have to check, right? You have to go back to the previous lesson. That's, can you take out a GCF from the trinomial, right? So to do that, we first draw a upside down division, and you want to find, is there any common factor that goes into negative 4, 36, and 40? Okay? And remember, we want whatever inside the parentheses to be a positive number. So if the leading coefficient is negative, your GCF has to be a negative. Well, so let's go back to the original problem. What is the GCF of 4, 36, and 40? It's going to be 4. So we're going to put 4, but with a negative. Because when you have negative 4 divided by negative 4, I get a positive 1. And then 36 divided by negative 4, I get negative 9. And 40 divided by negative 4, I get negative 10. Okay? And you also have to check, is there any common variables from the three terms? I see that the first term has u squared, the second term has just u to the 1st power, and then the last term does not have any u. So therefore, I cannot take out any letters from the term. So therefore, I'm going to just leave u squared as u squared, and just u for the second term. So the factor form, right, after you take out the GCF, the undistributed form, it's going to be negative 4, open parentheses, u squared minus 9u minus 10. This is your step 1. So step 1 is always take out a GCF if the leading coefficient is not 1. Okay, so in this case, if it's something other than 1, always check to see, can you take out a GCF? In this case, we have the undistributed form. And from here, we could now do the x game. So here, we're going to create our x game with negative 10, which is your c, on the top of the x game, and negative 9, which it should be at the bottom of the x game. And you're going to guess and check the two numbers. Well, the two numbers that multiply to get negative 10 and add to get a negative 9, it's going to be negative 10 and 1. Because negative 10 times 1 is negative 10, and negative 10 plus 1 is negative 9. So that means the two parentheses, it's going to be u minus 10 and u plus 1. But don't forget your GCF. Your GCF is also your factor. So that means the answer, the factor form of negative 4u squared plus 36u plus 40 is the products of negative 4, u minus 10, and u plus 1. Let's do one more factor completely problem. Here we have a to the 4th plus 4a cubed plus 4a squared. Well, you notice that the leading coefficient here is 1, so there's not really any GCF for the whole numbers 1, 4, and 4. But I want you to pay careful attention to the number of A's, right? Like remember in the class we talked about 4 apples, 3 apples, and 2 apples. Well, how many apples can you take it out at the same time from each term? Well, in this case, we have 2 apples. You can take it out. So we're going to take out 2 apples from each term. So therefore, from the first term, you have remaining 2 apples left. The remaining number of apples for the second term is 1 apple. And then lastly, the last term have no apples, like this, okay? So therefore, your GCF, right, it's going to be a squared. And then the trinomial that's inside the parentheses is a squared plus 4a plus 4. And then from here, we're going to do the x game now. So again, we're going to put the c, which is 4, on the top. And we're going to put the b, which is also 4, at the bottom. And you're going to find 2 numbers that multiply to get positive 4. And when you add them, you also get positive 4. There's not really a lot of choices. The 2 numbers are positive 2 and positive 2. So therefore, the 2 parentheses is going to be a plus 2 and a plus 2. Again, do not forget about the GCF, which is a squared. So in other words, if you were to do the box method for a plus 2 and a plus 2, and then whatever that is, and then you distribute with a squared, you get back the original problem. So the factor form of a to the 4th plus 4a cubed plus 4a squared is the product of a squared multiplied by a plus 2 and multiplied by a plus 2 again. Or, since the 2 parentheses are exactly the same, you can just write a squared multiplied by a plus 2 squared. Right? You can write it like this on Delta Math as well. Okay? Well, that's it for the lesson. So your homework today is to go on Delta Math and take a look at the homework that says IM2 Lesson 7 2-5 factoring x squared plus bx plus c. And you have to show work and turn it in next time that I see you. Thank you.